Hey everyone, this is Tim Picciott, joined with John Sneisen of the Economic Truth, and today we're going to talk about Elizabeth Warren's new economic proposals. And so right now I'm actually reading a article from Vox of all places, because I figured that if you're reading an article that's left-leaning, then at least they can't say it's coming from Fox News, but they're all the same. They both made my fake news list 2 years ago. Americans currently spend $3.7 trillion paying their share of employer-provided health insurance premiums. That money left in their wallets becomes taxable, adding $1.4 trillion. Warren also proposes a financial transaction tax of 0.1% of the value of every stock, bond, or derivatives transactions. That raises $800 billion. Then she adds a systemic risk fee on financial institutions with more than $50 billion in assets. That's another $100 billion. So we've got a lot more other stupid ideas that she has come up with. But right now, I mean, what is going to be some of the unintended consequences, let's say, of something like a financial transaction tax? I think they also refer to that as a Tobin tax. But what do you think kind of like unintended consequences do you see arising from just that first proposal?
Well, first of all, like what's going to happen is there's just going to be new avenues to tax evade. The lawyers of the ultra rich is going to write new ways, and then they're going to have their fingers in, and of course there's legislations to make sure that they're able to navigate their way through those taxation problems. That's always what happens anywhere in the world where you have very ultra wealthy people. They will always make sure that their lawyers take care of them, and then lobby for these loopholes to be created within these things. And unless you have very good lawyers or the right people in the financial world, you wouldn't be able to participate in those loopholes. So that's probably, there's just going to be another more loopholes created, and then potentially what I see though is that you're probably going to have a whole bunch of banks moving to other jurisdictions that it's better to do business because they don't want to pay any taxes on financial transactions. And then if you talk about financial transactions, so what are you gonna actually call a financial transaction? Is it a transaction between me and Tim, just sending money to each other? Is it when you go to a grocery store and buy something, are you gonna add another tax to that? That's financial transaction. So it's very loose language. I know what they're of course coming after evil Wall Street and
high frequency trading.
Yeah, but still, it could have very since it's very vague, it could have very unintended consequences where they could come after a lot more than just the high frequency trading taxation, where you tax the millisecond trades that they have and so on.
Or you might start getting more dark pools and this other private over-the-counter transactions that they don't even know about. And, these are Wall Street guys who are obviously got there because they are smart. Whether or not we agree with everything they do, that's a whole nother topic of debate. But the next thing that Warren proposes is adding another $2.9 trillion in corporate taxes by ending accelerated cost recovery and imposing a 35% minimum tax on foreign earnings.
Well, that's again, they're trying to literally tax corporations and businesses everywhere they are. This is a part of the FATCA, of course, and other things that the U.S. government has put forward, is trying to make it very hard for you to leave the United States of America, and trying to double tax you if you're in other countries and so on. You don't have that with most other nations. It's very hard for them. I know that Norway is trying to.
It's everywhere except for I think here and Guam, or one or two other places.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just another flawed kind of thing of trying to hunt after these big corporations. What you need to do is you actually need to remove most of the legislation for that, all the legislation, all the fees and everything that needs to be in place for somebody to get involved and start a new business in those fields. And then you might have some competition, because now there's legislative powers that that these corporations have used to lobby to create barriers to entry in all these different markets. So of course they created that, so now it's not easy for anybody else to compete with them. And now we're just gonna go after them, and then it's still gonna be really hard for those corporations to. It's still going to be hard for people to actually get in and be able to compete with them. So you're still going to have the same, corporate elite in control. It doesn't really matter, if you try to tax them more. They're going to dodge it. They're going to find ways to, get their money around the world. Anyhow, they're going to use whatever mechanisms they have. They got enough money to, use lawyers and and tools to avoid those taxes. And then, of course, you can have the 10% that is stuck there, that's going to be get hit because they are the ones that doesn't have the, the ultra wealthy lawyers. They still have a lot of money, but they don't have, the apparatus that these big corporations have.
And where does you think this money is going to come from? I mean, at the end of the day, we are the ones who pay the corporate tax because a company needs to spend another 10% of its revenue on taxes, then they raise the price of their good 10%. Now, they can cut to a certain degree, but eventually that is going to be felt by higher prices by everyone else. And so, whether you're paying it directly as an out-of-pocket premium to a healthcare provider or whether or not everything you buy has another embedded tax in it, I would probably say Warren's way will probably end up paying a lot more. I mean, I just take a look at what I was doing before Obamacare and after Obamacare, and right now we are in Maricopa County, which actually saw the highest increase in, which awesome stat to have, the highest increase in the healthcare expenditures. And it's kind of apples to oranges, but my bill went from $70 a month, $1,200 deductible to closer to $1,200 a month with a $6,000 deductible. Now, granted, I then got married and had 2 small kids, but you're still talking about 2 kids under the age of 4, and then also my husband or my wife, so it's one unit. We hardly ever use the care, but we still have to pay absolutely through the rate, so through the nose. So another bad idea that Elizabeth Warren has is, prior to this plan, Warren's wealth tax was 2% on assets over $50 million and 3% on assets over $1 billion. Sorry, billionaires, now it's 6%. So I guess if you have over $1 billion, she wants to charge you a 6% wealth tax. So this is you've got a net worth of $1 billion. So maybe you have unrealized stock that you haven't sold. You would actually every year get charged 6%. So it's not like you get whacked 6% once, which would be bad enough. You would every single year have that compound and compound and compound. And then people are going to do things like they're going to get charitable trust, which is strategies that I help people out with right now.
Clinton and a whole bunch of others use.
Yeah, which actually Jeffrey Epstein was actually the attorney, or was the financial advisor who set up the Clinton Foundation, and when he probably did not kill himself. Who knows if he's even still alive? But so what this is going to do?
I would say welcome to Norway. Like, Norway has a wealth tax, like where you have stagnant money sitting in the bank or whatever it is. They actually tax you. It's not like a direct tax on all kind of assets that you have, but you actually have that in Norway where you have standing money somewhere, it's going to get taxed. So it's a big thing, and the reason why a lot of businesses moved out of Norway, and the big business guys, they're in London or elsewhere where they actually have beneficial tax laws.
And we're talking about unrealized gains. So, you bought Apple stock for $1, and now you've got, thousands and thousands of shares. Now I'm not sure what it's at now. Let's say it's, $200 right now. And so you haven't actually sold and realized those gains, but you're going to get taxed. And so then when you're taxed, then the only way you can then pay for that is by then selling your assets, which is then going to depreciate the stock market. But it's not just you, it's you and everybody else who are in that.
How about your car? You buy a car, like the bank look at it as an asset. Are you gonna start taxing people for having a car or a house?
Well, that depreciates, and then they're getting rid of accelerated depreciation for businesses. So maybe the car is not the best example, but whether even a cryptocurrency. So you bought crypto on Coinbase or Bittrex or Kraken or one of the big U.S. exchanges, and the price of Bitcoin at the end of the year goes up to, let's say it's $50,000 of Bitcoin December 31st, and then January 2nd it crashes down to $8,000. Well, then you're on the hook for when it was at 50,000. Now you've got to liquidate all your Bitcoin to pay the taxes.
Well, this comes back to like what is really an asset, right? And when you look at assets, it's the banks and everybody says that it's what do you hold in stocks, bonds, your house, whatever it is. But really, to me, an asset is not an asset until you actually are able to sell it for a profit. So, like, this is just totally, utterly insane that they're, coming after unrealized gains. And, as you said, if you actually, follow, like most people, and you sell low and buy high, well, you're going to get whacked by this tax for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as part of this enforcement, she's also, saying that they're going to raise another $2.3 trillion by going after the rich and doing more tax audits to catch people trying to evade taxes.
Yeah, and this is also part of what me and Josh actually covered. We covered before the Panama Papers. We found a report called the OECD report for I believe it was BEPS, so it's base erosion and profit shifting. It's called, which is part of the UN is working on this together with the OECD, and it was bilateral workings between nations to be able to track taxes in between nations. And this came out, like they had this available before, like right before the actual Panama Papers came out, and then voila, it didn't happen too long. Like the next year, Canada had BEPS in its budget. And it's like, what is BEPS? People were like, oh, it's what we've been talking about, base erosion and profit shifting. So it's basically coming after, as you said, people moving money offshore and trying to, tax them at any moment that they can by. But what's going to hurt? It's not going to hurt, again, the ultra wealthy. It's going to hurt, the actual business class, the real business class of, small, medium-sized business owners that are out there, competing in a free market per se. They're the ones that's going to get whacked by this.
And the thing is, from a 100,000-foot view, none of this even matters, because the whole thing is, if the money is backed by debt, so the dollar bill you have in your pocket, when it first came in circulation, December 23rd, 1913, had 4% interest on it. So after you create $1, at the end of year one, you owe $1.04. There's no way to mathematically pay back $1.04 with $1. We live in this high-tech slavery system. And then the fact now is, there's so much debt in the system, is you could take all the top 1%, take all the billionaires, confiscate 100% of their wealth, assume they're still going to make the same amount of money, which they wouldn't, and then take all that income, and great, you run the government for like 3 months. It's just the fact that, all these people want to tinker around with the edges, and the super rich are the ones who own the politicians, who want the high taxes, because guess what? Warren Buffett is the one who is the largest recipient through his various companies of the 2008 bailout. And then you take a look at some of the secret bailouts that went on. Journalists like Mark Pittman, who then mysteriously died right afterwards, probably not too unlike Jeffrey Epstein. But, so this guy who did a FOIA request saw that there was, $16 trillion secret bailout, which is hardly ever even covered. And this is way before I was coming on Wham, probably even before Wham was created, when they ended up figuring out that the $800 billion TARP was just a smokescreen for another $16 trillion. But these are all the richest people in the world. Even Gaddafi's got money. The European Central Bank, and this was American.
Canadian banks got money too through the TARP fund and through the secret bailouts. So it's they basically bailed out the whole banking industry worldwide, the American taxpayers.
And so the richest people out there want to raise your taxes, because they're the ones who write the laws and own the politicians to get your money. And so the fact that, all these liberals who have, probably a lot of them have well intentions, that they don't realize that everything they're advocating for is literally, basically, they were conditioned to think that, because these guys hire all the psychologists, hire all the PR, all the programming on television programming, all the propaganda you get from the government schools, to then condition you to think that way, to basically beg for your own enslavement, which is, Paul Warburg, creator of the Federal Reserve System, said, we shall have a one-world currency. It's just a matter of if it's through consent or conquest. And so what they're doing is they're going to get people to beg them basically for more enslavement. And that's exactly what I think everything that's going on with Elizabeth Warren. What does John say?
Well, yeah, it's 100%. It's all about creating all these laws and regulations, make it like it's getting harder and harder for people to live around the world. Like, look at all the protests around the world, in Lebanon, Chile, Hong Kong, France, now in several Arabic countries as well. You're just seeing the symptom of the fiat currency system that's destroying the wealth of all these people, and of course the purchasing power of their medium of exchange. And it really has corrupted, every single society around the world to a point where, like, we're losing all this power, and we're basically then forced to go because there's not enough from the business, like from the incomes. She's trying to say that she's pro workers and all this. There's not enough money on that side to actually then sustain, because the corporations, they are forced into paying dividends, so they got to cut a whole bunch of worker employees because the people that are sitting on the shares wanting dividends, they want to fight inflation, and so they constantly need more and more, and then these corporations need to cut more and more, or create worse product. Like look at, for example, the toxic products of the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, all this stuff that comes from that push and need to give all those dividends to their investors. But then the problem is you have an inflationary currency, so you constantly need to give them more and more and more. But as you have that, you get less and less income. So it's just a vicious cycle that you create.
And one thing before we leave that I just remembered is I was watching a few minutes of the debate, so that way you guys didn't have to. And during the last debate, I remember Elizabeth Warren saying, and there's only one thing, and I don't know, that's probably a bad voice, but there's only one thing that I've studied my entire life, I've devoted my entire life to, and it's a single issue of why people end up going broke. And you know what? The people go broke because of all of your ideas, and the fact that Washington, D.C. is permeated with people who are Keynesians, who just think that, more broken windows, fake alien attacks, that the fax machine is going to have a little more relevance than the internet, or that the internet will have a little more relevance than, the fax machine. All these idiots who are up there in Congress, who are up there in the swamp, and they are literally just begging for the exact things that got them into the situation. And it's so frustrating, and I'm sure it's frustrating for all of you out there that just see this over and over and over and over again. And I'm not sure, you probably maybe are a little bit older to maybe not be a millennial, or we're at the top end of the millennial spectrum, but seeing the just everyone else in our generation who is just basically, probably 70% openly embracing this type of socialism, that we are definitely, the outsiders, I guess, when it comes to
right at the back of it.
Yeah, so we get the bad rap of being, the millennials, even though, there's very little, I think, that John and I have in common with your average millennial that's out there. But anyways, we just wanted to get a quick video on, some of the disasters that would result from a Elizabeth Warren presidency. I mean, at the end of the day, everything is too little, too late. There's no amount of fixing this. You could take all the rich people's wealth, not going to matter, and everything they're doing is just going to, make things even worse, and it's not going to, and then the rich are just going to get even more powerful. They've already got all the money. It doesn't matter. And the richest people hire people like me that help set up different types of charitable trusts and make everyone basically better off except for the IRS. And so I don't see any of these proposals doing anything that they think it's going to do. And all that's going to happen is your healthcare is going to get worse. It's going to take a lot longer, and everyone's going to be a lot less happy, and then probably even cut life expectancy. So these policies will literally kill you.
Well, yeah, and then, like Elizabeth Warren, she studied this all her life. I'm very depressed to see that, what she's come up with. It really sucks that you used all your life on, actually putting out all these policies. Meanwhile, you don't even recognize that it's actually the currency printing and the flawed monetary system that you were talking about, that you owning more interest than you actually have debt and so on. That is what's creating all this, the poor people in the world. And then you have bozos, like you were talking about Paul Krugman there. I wouldn't say another stupid thing that he actually just came out with and tweeted. He said that money is debt we owe to ourselves. He repeated it in capital letter, like a social justice warrior, crazy person. But it's like, yeah, if I go to the bank and I actually borrow money, that's not money owed to myself, you idiot. These people are just so blatantly just think in the ways of government that government can print millions upon millions of dollars. Meanwhile, then you will create exactly the same problem that you're trying to prevent by all these taxes. And so it's just a vicious cycle that they're going to continue to keep on unless we change the actual physical monetary system.
And this is a point that I just am thinking of right now. So Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, what group of people in America are the most worst off? It's the Native Americans. And then who are the ones who are basically who get the, most amount of, quote unquote help, government assistance. And then all of a sudden then they get dependent on it. There's incentives for them not to work. And so if she actually took her own culture that she was hijacking, that we all know isn't her culture, and actually studied that, then you'd actually see, who's really better off. Let's say, look in the 30s, you had Japanese and Italian Americans in internment camps, and the Japanese Americans are probably the wealthiest group of Americans there are, and then you've got the Native Americans who get the most quote unquote help, and all their help goes to making a couple fat cats at the very top get super rich with deals that they have in the casinos.
Yeah, 100%. This is like we're back where I'm from too. There's a casino, like one of the head chiefs of it's called Pegasus Reserve. He lives in the city in a $3 million home. Meanwhile, it's his reserve is one of the worst off in Canada. So you just
and a $3 million in Winnipeg is a lot different than $3 million in Vancouver.
Oh, it definitely is. It's a massive mansion that he lives in. So and of course they they gave them the garbage of the casino industry that they're basically, you know, ripping people off there as well, right? So they really have done a lot of harm to the Aboriginal people. Like I see, like my wife, she is from the Peguis Reserve originally, but they were actually the ones that stayed out of, you know, the reserve. They didn't go on and basically the internment camp that they created these reserves into for those poor Aboriginals, and so they were actually well off. Like most of our families, you know, are doing quite successful things, but they didn't go to the reserve where they became dependent on the government.
Yeah, and so, you know, basically, government, freedom is the answer. What's the question? Unfortunately, for people like Elizabeth Warren, it's government's the answer. What's the question? Same thing we see over and over and over again. Anyways, I'm Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, along with John Sneisen.
Yeah, and you know, it's we're here from World Alternative Media. You know, find the truth.
Be the change.
Like what you see here at WHAM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we can defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on float.app. That's flote.app. at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at WHAM, W-A-M. Float.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Float and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best liberty event known to mankind, other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.